and to come up with a whole new bill. A bill that will magically unify the Republican conference and pass without any Democratic support, even though the House Republican majority has proven over and over again that they are incapable of doing almost anything without Democratic help. And if that's not enough, Trump is adding a couple new requests on top of that. You may have noticed in that statement I just read that Trump said he wants this funding bill to be combined with an increase in the debt ceiling. Now, the debt ceiling and the bill to fund the government are two completely separate issues. Congress has to pass the bill to fund the government by late Friday night when the clock strikes midnight, or the government will shut down. But Congress doesn't have to raise the debt ceiling until sometime next year. So why is Trump complicating this whole already complicated thing and demanding that Republicans raise the debt ceiling right now? Well, because he doesn't want to be responsible for raising the debt ceiling in his administration, even though it's something that all but two presidents in the last 100 years have done. And we know that is what Trump is trying to do because he literally just told everyone. This is from that same statement I just read. The most foolish and inept thing ever done by congressional Republicans was allowing our country to hit the debt ceiling in 2025. Increasing the debt ceiling is not great, but we'd rather do it on Biden's watch. Someone should probably tell Trump that if he wants to make it look like raising the debt ceiling isn't his idea, he should probably not put explicit instructions to raise the debt ceiling in a public statement. Anyway, since Trump came out against Johnson's funding bill, the floodgates have opened, and members of Trump's own party are now using this moment to prove their loyalty to him. Tonight, Senator Joni Ernst, who has been under fire for waffling on Pete Hegseth's potential nomination as Secretary of Defense, she released a Christmas-themed statement blasting Johnson's bill. Santa came early to D.C. with a Christmas tree bill full of a whole lot of spending. Congress deserves a lump of coal for failing to do its job and putting special interests ahead of taxpayers. Jolly. At the same time, Steve Bannon is telling his followers that anyone who votes for this bill should be primaried.
We got to man the ramparts, got to light people up today. You cannot, under any circumstances, vote for this bill, and you got to tell them flat out, you're going to get turfed out of here. You're never going back to Congress.
Tonight, Bannon posted that video with the caption, "Mike Johnson has got to go." And that is the other interesting turn of events here. Republicans are now starting to call for the ouster of their own Speaker of the House, Elon's text buddy, who has been deemed insufficiently loyal to the MAGA cause, which means another potentially very messy Republican leadership fight just 3 weeks from now. In other words, Speaker Mike Johnson is in a bit of a bind here. It is worth noting, however, that this is also sort of all his own fault. Since becoming Speaker, Johnson has repeatedly promised not to do any more short-term funding bills, only to realize that short-term funding bills are literally the only way to keep the government funded in the modern era. Here was Johnson right after Congress passed the last short-term funding bill in September.
I want to assure everyone, and I've said this multiple times this week, we are not going to return to the Christmas omnibus spending tradition, and that's a commitment I've made to everyone.
We are not going to return to the Christmas omnibus spending tradition, and that is a commitment I've made to everyone. A commitment that lasted approximately 84 days. I don't even have a watch. Earlier tonight, Democratic leader Hakeem Jeffries said that if Republicans shut down the government, Democrats will make sure the American people know who is responsible.
House Republicans will now own any harm that is visited upon the American people that results from a government shutdown or worse.
Joining me now is Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett, Democrat of Texas, a member of the House Oversight Committee. Congresswoman, thank you for being here tonight. What is happening in the House of Representatives? This was supposed to be just, a pro forma exercise. They're going to pass this year, and it has turned into an utter debacle with people openly calling for Speaker Johnson to be thrown out of the Speaker's office. How are Democrats looking at this?
Listen, we're looking at this like this is their problem. We have seen this play out over and over in the entire 2 years that I've been in Congress. We know that they had a problem picking a speaker when I first got to Congress, and I thought since they held on to the speaker a little bit longer than they held on to McCarthy, that I could go into January knowing that Mike Johnson would be the speaker, but now they're calling for his ouster. And remember, this is not like one of the most senior members, right? So basically, he had not burned enough bridges, and so they had to go way, way down in seniority to find someone that they could come to a consensus on. When they swear in January, or when we all try to swear in January, listen, there's going to be less Republicans than we had in the 118th, right? Because the story has not really been told about how strongly House Democrats performed while the Republicans won the White House, while they ended up picking up so many seats in the Senate. You know who lost seats? The House, right? Now, should we have a Speaker Jeffries? Absolutely. If North Carolina didn't cheat and take away our seats, we would have a Speaker Jeffries, and we would not be in this situation. But here's the deal. There is no fixing this without the Democrats. We have seen this over and over, and I'm just going to sit back and sip my tea and wait on them to figure it out.
Or maybe sip something stronger. I'm just saying it. Hakeem Jeffries, you talk about Leader Jeffries and say, he said in a statement, House Republicans have been ordered to shut down the government and hurt the working class Americans they claim to support. You break the bipartisan agreement, you own the consequences that follow. Am I to understand from that statement that Democrats are willing to see Republicans shut down the government and not bail them out?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, you know, I take my lead from my actual leader. I don't work against him, which is what Mike Johnson has to deal with all the time. You know, the lack of cohesiveness on that side is why this has been the most unproductive Congress. People all over X and everything is like, well, they don't deserve anything. They're so unproductive. Let me tell you, the people that y'all keep putting in charge are the reason that we are unproductive, because they don't understand how to govern. And honestly, they don't even have a will to govern. And the fact that they are allowing somebody who basically is a shadow president to come out and tell them what to do, including Donald Trump, because listen, we know that Elon, as they have touted about how they need to get rid of the immigrants, let me be clear, Elon cannot become president of the United States because he is an immigrant who has gained U.S. citizenship later on in life. So he's not qualified to be, or he's not allowed to be under our Constitution. So instead, he decided that he was going to buy a president. And right now, he is pulling all the strings on Trump. But I think that it's funny that they want to talk about money and talk about what we're spending it on. But I've yet to hear that him or Vivek or any of them is going to say, you know what, we know that it would be a conflict of interest if we continue to take the millions and millions of dollars from the federal government that we normally receive. So we are not going to do that while also making decisions about what to do on the budget for the federal government.
I guess the question is, it's chaos, right? The car guy, the rocket guy is now dictating legislative priorities, scuttling bills in the House of Representatives that could shut down the government. The speaker, who was elected after a lot of back and forth inside the House Republican Conference, could be on his way out in 3 weeks. The question, I guess, is, do you worry as Democrats that what might come after Mike Johnson could be potentially worse than what you have now?
I don't think it can get any worse. I mean, here's the deal. We thought that Mike Johnson was even worse than McCarthy. And Mike Johnson had to realize, in order to get anything done, that he had to come and talk to us. Listen, if they want to be successful, then all they've got to do is come together as a caucus. But the reality is that you've got bomb throwers. You don't have a unified caucus, and they are going to have a one-seat majority. What does that mean? Ultimately, they're going to have 217 people, while we have 215 on the Democratic side. That means they lose one vote. If one person, because you have to have a majority, if it's 216 to 216, it fails. Let me tell you, this quote-unquote mandate that MAGA thinks exists, it ain't going nowhere, right? Because they literally can't do the basics. We have passed the least amount of bills in this Congress because of the Republicans. And let me remind you, because you brought up the debt ceiling. Remember why the last speaker got kicked out? It was because he raised the debt ceiling, and all of it. And Trump was the one calling for his head. Now he's like, raise the debt ceiling. You know why? Because his Trump tax cuts, this old con that he has, right, that helps out all the billionaires that he's putting into his administration, or at least is hoping to put into his administration, those Trump tax cuts, they expire in 2025. Mind you, he is the only president we've ever had that in one term ran our debt up to $8 trillion. So he already knows he's about to run our debt up, so he doesn't want to have to deal with the debt ceiling. Instead, he wants us to do it. Listen, I ain't got no favors for you, Trump. When you get here, then yes, you will have the House, the Senate, as well as the White House, and y'all can see if y'all can figure it out. But right now, I am not trying to shut down this government, because let me tell you, whether you're a Democrat, Republican, or independent, when you are traveling over these holidays, you may end up with some problems, because TSA is federal government, because those that are doing air traffic control to make sure that we're safe, that's federal government. If you are concerned about the border, let me tell you, that is also federal government officers. And so, yes, if you're concerned about our international security, guess what? Our military personnel will not get paid, all because you don't want to help out those that need help as relates to seniors. You don't want to help out farmers. You don't want to help out our veterans. These are the things that were in the bill. And for those that want to talk about a COLA, let me tell you, there is no language about the COLA. So stop saying that there is a 40% increase. It is actually silent. And you know why? Because there is a law that is in place, because in exchange for a COLA that we give out to our staffers all the time, you know what we had to give up? We had to give up honorariums. We had to give up being able to work on the side. But you know what we also have to do is we have to pay for a house in the district that we live in, as well as we have to pay for housing in D.C.
That is the reality of the pay raise, or I think you're using the official legislative terms for it, that was in the bill that has just been killed by Elon Musk, Donald Trump, maybe even J.D. Vance. I'm not sure. There's so many cooks in the kitchen. Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett, with just a few thoughts and feelings about what is happening in the chaotic House-run House of Representatives. Thank you so much for breaking it down for us. It's great to have you on the show.
Absolutely.
I'm now joined by Dan Pfeiffer, former White House senior advisor to President Obama and co-host of Pod Save America. Dan, we're all watching the dumpster catch fire once again, but somehow the flames seem even more spectacular and brighter and hotter than they were before. Donald Trump is presumed to have a mandate, is presumed to be able to control the Republican conference and have them do his bidding. Tonight, it seems like there are going to be problems along the way. What are you making of what we're seeing unfold on the Hill right now?
Well, I'd say a couple things. First, this is a preview of what government is going to look like under Donald Trump starting January 20th of 2025. Pure chaos, government by tweet, shadow President Elon Musk with no knowledge of what he's talking about, just firing off a tweet and then upending, a bipartisan deal. It's pure chaos out there. And so that's one. Two, I think Donald Trump is trying to do something that seems almost quasi-strategic here, which is to get the debt ceiling raised. No Democrat should vote for a debt ceiling increase on Joe Biden's watch. As Congresswoman Crockett pointed out, Republicans have the House, the Senate, and the White House coming up. And therefore, this is their job to do, and they should do it next year.
What should the Democratic posture? I mean, Jasmine Crockett was very clear. They are not going to, according to Leader Jeffries, who's calling the plays here, they are not going to help Republicans. Does that concern you at all, that we could be barreling towards a government shutdown, as she outlines, right ahead of the holiday season, where you're going to have TSA workers potentially not getting paid, FAA, all the kinds of the infrastructure for holiday travel, for example, is largely on the government dime. That could all, they might not be getting paid. Is there political risk in that?
Well, there certainly is for the Republicans, who are going to be the reasons that the government shut down. There was a bipartisan deal. They would have gotten plenty of votes from the Democrats, more than enough to pass.